You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining me for another amazing episode of the Daily African Proverbs. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and I am in Seattle, Washington. And, it's a beautiful morning here. I'm just so happy that Gogo Rutendo Ngara is here with us. I see Debbie and Mwenge with us as well, on Clubhouse. And I also see that we have a few people joining us on YouTube. I'm just setting up for our time together today. We are going to take a virtual journey to Seychelles, where we have an amazing proverb from Seychelles that we'll be discussing. So just give me one moment to set up and then we will get started. We have a special guest as well today. Our guest is, an amazing brother that, you're going to learn so much from. So I'll say more about him in just a moment. If you're joining us for the first time, we do this every Monday to Friday. We gather here and we dissect these African proverbs and we gain African wisdom. Our hope is always that we make our ancestors proud and we make them smile through this, consistent work that we are doing here. So you just feel at home and, make sure you're sharing the link to this room with other people who might have not, who might not know that the session is already going on. The proverb that we're going to discuss today says that a pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. A pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. When you hear this proverb, what is it that comes to your mind? I want to share the link to the YouTube live stream at the top of the Clubhouse room in a moment here, so that those of you who have the ability to join us on YouTube, you can also do so, and you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel. We are growing the YouTube space as well. Our presence there is growing, and that's important for the future of this work with the Daily African Proverbs. The proverb says, a pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. I'm curious to know what it means to you, if you're watching, if you're listening. And I just want to say that we prepared a few things. I have an amazing team in Kenya that I work with, to select these proverbs and to come up with, our perspectives of what we think they mean, and also in the context of the current time, what these proverbs mean. So before I continue, I just want to thank you, Gogo. I know you're on the road today, so you can't join us, but you're listening, and that just means so much to me. I just want you to know that you're deeply appreciated. Every Thursday, whenever I go to YouTube after our session, I find really inspiring comments about how, the words that you say, the knowledge that you share, is just invaluable. So thank you again for always being, a guide and, a healer to many of us. So this proverb, a pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. This proverb is about success. It means that even a small person can achieve great things if they put their mind to it and work really, really hard to accomplish whatever they put their mind in. In this proverb, the setting sun represents the end of the day. And so the proverb is saying that even if someone starts out small, like a pygmy, they can still achieve a lot by the end of their life, So it's not where you start your journey or where you are in your journey, whether it's with work, whether it's with school, whether it's no matter what journey you're on, that doesn't determine where you're going to end the journey. You just need to keep going, So these are the takeaways that I want to share with you for this episode that you can, note somewhere. The first thing is start your day with a positive attitude, just knowing that, no matter what it is, no matter how difficult life is, you're still going to make it if you approach it with a positive attitude. Then number 2, surround yourself with people who are supportive and will encourage you to succeed. And then number 3, don't get discouraged by setbacks. Setbacks and failures. I remember earlier this week, I think it was Tuesday, we hosted Kendi Mumanyi, and it was just incredible how open he was to talking about his failures, and how he learned from each failure. And I felt that, this proverb today is very much connected to the conversation we were having on Tuesday around, how do you learn from your mistakes? So again, I see that Lita has joined us on the stage. Lita is our guest today. I was hoping that Lita would join us on YouTube, but we are going to take whatever Lita is able to give us. So in starting, maybe I'll just introduce who Lita is. If you're meeting Lita for the first time, his energy is just infectious. He's a traditional healer, an ancestral medicine practitioner, a shamanic practitioner, and a qualified NLP coach. I want to learn more about what an NLP coach is, by the way, Lita. But you are a brother that made Africa Day so incredible. You contributed massively to that, and I want to thank you and Gogo and everybody else that participated in Africa Day. The way that our conversation with Lita is going to look like is that he's going to share with us his own interpretation of this proverb, and then a story from his childhood that inspires him today as a leader, especially in the areas of work that you're doing as a traditional healer, ancestral medicine practitioner, and shamanic practitioner. And then we are going to, talk a little more about your work, some of your accomplishments, some of the things that excite you. And then after that, we'll hear from our audience members, and then you will share how we can support you and how we can stay connected with you. So later, if you are, available, just unmute and, share your voice for a moment.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I hear you very well.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, what a beautiful introduction as always, Simon. I'm humbled.
Oh, thank you so much. For some reason, your audio is low.
Is it low?
Yeah. And also when you're settled down, I want to see if you earlier on you said you had your laptop. That means that you could join through the Ecam link, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, it says connecting for some strange reason. I don't know what's happening.
Yeah, that's. Let me look into that.
Connect.
But let's keep
Perhaps
going.
you can resend me the link, and then I'll.
Okay, I'll do that now.
I'll talk you through it, and I'll try to connect. But yeah, let's keep it going.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah. So. Sorry, I've just been driving, so I'm just trying to settle and ground myself real quick. But thank you so much, Simon, for this platform. It's a deep honor and a privilege as always. I'd like to share with you, if that's okay, a pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. So before I go on and continue, I would like to kind of
express to you guys what for me has been happening just recently.
Hi, Lita.
Oh, I can
Oh,
see
I
you
can
now,
see you
Sam.
now,
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, so let's mute you on Clubhouse. I think we figured out the challenge you are having.
Do you want me
Do you want me
to
to
just jump onto this
jump
one?
onto this one?
Yeah. So let's mute you on Clubhouse.
Okay, I'll just take out my headsets.
Thank you. Yeah, you know, when you're driving and then suddenly you're introduced and pass the microphone and your body's probably still in motion.
Like, what's going on?
So thank you so much for being here. I'm trying not to talk so much because, you know, I have COVID-19, so I'm trying to lay low and drink my herbs and heal. I got my results yesterday. This is the first time I'm getting COVID-19, so I'm just trying to have you do the talking today. I'll just do the asking of the questions, but I'm just grateful. Carry on.
I'd be honored. I'd be very honored. So, from a Southern Hemisphere perspective, one of the things is that we just recently had the privilege and the blessing of a powerful, powerful time of the year, which is the winter solstice. You know, and so it's beautiful that we get this quote today, which speaks of the darkness and the light as well. You know, and so one of the things that I did was we got together as a few individuals and we decided, why don't we honor the solstice by really, really looking into what it means? What does the winter solstice from a Southern Hemisphere perspective uh, look like? And I remember sitting with my guides and my ancestors and just asking, if I had to do something over the solstice, what would I do? And one of the things that they said was, why don't we honor it by tapping into the shadow? Now, of course, this was very, very scary for me. This was immensely scary because shadow work is always the hardest thing that most people run away from. Most people are drawn towards the light. We've got this beautiful new age movement that's all about the light and the light, yes. And when I say light, I mean LIGHT, as in light, you know, a bright light, as well as light as a feather. So those are the two analogies whenever I think of light. But then my ancestors and my guides were like, that's not what we want you to do, because this time of the year is a deep, deep moment of dealing with the shadow. It's all about the shadow. It's shadow season. It's you know, if you look around you, it's cold. It's the energy and the vibration is very low because there's a lot of death with the plants, and people are much more miserable because of the change of weather and the season, you know. But we're blessed in South Africa because we still have a lot of sun that comes through. So they were basically inviting me to look into the shadow and stay with the shadow. And so when I was exploring this beautiful concept of the shadow, they told me about two aspects. So the first one is the shadow, quote unquote, warrior, and the light, quote unquote, warrior. And they pretty much was saying to me that most of us spend so much time in the light because it's easy to be light and to be light. Not a lot of us go through processes of honoring the shadows. Not a lot of us spend enough time with the shadows because as human beings, we go through something and then our shadow aspect comes through and we immediately tap into, quote unquote, the light too soon. So we don't honor the shadow. We don't sit with the darkness that the shadow is trying to bring to us. And so they were saying to me that maybe let's explore that. Let's explore the idea of being held in a safe space where we can work with the shadow. We can work with the shadow aspect of ourselves. And they were also saying it's funny how as human beings we go through so much healing and so much personal development, and we have so many tools. And then they said, but what if we let go of all these tools that pull us out of situations and simply sat in the shadow? We're not saying don't have them, have them for sure, but park them for now so that you can learn from the shadow. Uh, it was deeply significant for us in the Southern Hemisphere because it was the longest night, which is beautiful because that's when the shadow is most active, the winter solstice, the coldest time of the year. So I sat with that for a moment, and they asked me to share some of these things, and they brought up these concepts of the shadow warrior as well as the light warrior. Now, the shadow warrior is a supportive structure that helps you within the darkness. It's an archetype. There are many ways that we could describe it, many names that we could give it, but for me, what sat well was the shadow warrior. And then I asked about the shadow journey. And I'll share with you some of the things that I spoke about during this time. And it's important that I know that today's parable is all about the shadow as well as the light, talking about that. So I'll incorporate both. But let's focus on the shadow for a bit, and I'll just take you through the journey that I led during this period, during this winter solstice, during this dark night, darkest night.
Lita, when was it? When did the solstice happen?
It's the same as you guys. You guys are celebrating the summer solstice because the
Yeah.
longest day, which was I think on Tuesday, right? 2 days ago. And for us, it was the winter, which is usually not always, but the coldest time of the year. And it was freezing, Simon. I'm wearing this jacket and 3 jackets, and of course the sun sets a little bit earlier. And that's also the period where, quote unquote, the sun returns back towards the southern hemisphere because it spent a lot of time in the northern hemisphere. And I know that the spring breaks and all of this stuff in the northern hemisphere is quite a big deal. So enjoying the fact that perhaps there's more joy, there's more lightness, there's more quote unquote light. And you'll find that was also the summer solstice meant that there was more sunlight that came through in that period. So back in the days, our ancestors always used to honor and celebrate these periods and these moments. It was the norm that we would watch the equinoxes, the solstices, and just follow and then do rituals accordingly. And from an individual perspective, from an individual is just living through life and understanding the different seasons. We've got spring, which is the jovial season. We've got summer, which is whoa. It's like spring is like, yes, finally we've just come out of this harsh winter. And then spring, it's like, yes, let's all go out and do something because the energy is allowing. And then we've got autumn from a southern hemisphere perspective, where everything starts to die. And that's the moment where one should stop and start to, reflect around death, around, because as you see, it's getting a little bit colder and the seasons are shifting. And then we've got winter, and at the peak of winter is the solstice, which is the longest night and sometimes the coldest day, slash night. And what you do then is you go deep into reflection. And I like to sit in the dark whenever that comes through and just allow the darkness to tell me the messages that I need to learn from, and go on a journey. So this year we decided to do, for the past 2 years, last year I did a beautiful experience with Gogo Rutendo, who's my mentor friend and, dear sister who I love dearly. With her support, of course, holding space. Gogo Ru's on another level.
So how did you convince Gogo to mentor you? I'm joking. Keep going. I'm joking.
I just feel like that's a little bit of a hint, Gogoru. Well, I tell you what. At this moment, she's all about creating people that will mentor other people. So Simon, ask me. Don't ask her because you'll never get a hold of her. It takes months. You'll have a waiting line that's longer than ever. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, so we sat through that, and it was such a privilege and a blessing to host a winter solstice ceremony by myself. For a change, it was myself and this friend of mine, Marla. But usually I lean in on Gogo, and I'm like, Gogo, help me. But my ancestors were like, no, come on, man. She's given. Now it's time for you to start giving based upon your experiences. So for me, that was such a powerful moment, and and just working with the shadow and just calling upon this archetype of the shadow warrior or the shadow guide. I find that in my life's journey, and what I try to guide some of my clients through right now is like, how do you deal with your quote unquote traumas in a safe environment by tapping into the realms, the spiritual realms, and calling upon a guide to help you to navigate that space in a safe and contained manner. You know how when you go to a psychologist or whatever it is, we have someone that's there to hold space for us to express. What if we decided that whatever traumas have happened in our lives, we can still be able to go through it, not by ourselves, but having a spiritual archetypal ally that can work with us. And that for me, I call the shadow warrior. And so I sat with that for a while. And of course, there's the other side of the coin, which is the light warrior. Everybody in the new age knows that very much, but nobody speaks of the shadow warrior very much. So I sat through that on the solstice and guided people through a beautiful experience by tapping into my own experiences, because I've gone through 2 years of the past since 2020, since about 2019, 2020, a lot of traumatic events from, the death of my father, the loss of my business kind of collapsing and crashing, and, my wife divorcing. I went through divorce. I went through, just a massive initiation that was kind of botched. So there's a lot of things that have happened in those past 4 years. And for me, it was such a great invitation to sit through the shadow and develop assistance from the shadow side. And I'll share with you the journey that we went on real quick. Is that okay, Simon? Can I do that?
Please do. Please. I want to go on that journey with you.
So one of the things that I learned from the shadow warrior was that, probably one word that most of us run away from a lot is that, the access point or the gateway to the shadow warrior is tapping into the power of vulnerability, and the questions were, are you willing to be vulnerable enough to allow yourself to experience within a safe and contained manner, without the tools and the tricks, and without the need to jump to the resourcing that you've learned over the years? Are you willing to let go of that and know that it's available to you and it doesn't go away? But for this process to let go of the bravado, the courage, the strength, and just sit in this pit of, shadow trauma experiences that you might not be dealing with, that you've suppressed, because that's all it is. The shadows, aspects of ourselves that we've kind of suppressed so that we can move on and live our lives, and it affects us in different ways, in different circumstances, in different scenarios. So just the exploration of that for me, and they were saying the shadow aspect is the gateway or the access point is your capability to be vulnerable and the power of vulnerability. And of course, I shared with some of the people that were on the journey with me the vulnerability and the aspect of having to tap into my dad. I love my dad and his death and the impact of that's had on my life. Just him being this ancestor on the other side who's literally sitting right behind me, saying, okay, let's go here now. Let's talk about this experience and how you were, was such a beautiful opening and healing for me. And then one of the other aspects that came through was, was tapping into the 7 stages of initiation into light. And one of the things that they said was, each stage has a guardian. And I'll just read them quickly. I mean, the first stage is just identifying the light within yourself. In other words, that's what the dark night of the soul. That's when the death occurs, because you can't deny that there is no light without darkness, and there is no darkness without light. So they are these beautiful spaces that hold each other. The rising of the sun cannot exist without the darkness of the night. The moon cannot exist without the power of the sun. So it's this beautiful relationship between the two. And then the second one was, and that's the guardian of that gate that they said was Set. And the second one was the ability for you to connect to the light is just learning to understand who you are, which is a small space of awakening. And of course, all of this is held in different phases, and I'll just run through it. And then the third aspect was becoming the light, just knowing who you are and experiencing, the shadow aspects of yourself and allowing it to not impact you, but to observe it and allow it to play out and to not be so involved. Just like we let the light play out, let's let the shadow play out without it being too involved, so that we have enough safety and barrier around it. And the fourth one was set, share your light. That's when you start transforming the dark into light. That's the parable where it sits in, and that's when you start transmitting. The parable is probably on the fourth stage at the current moment, where you start to share your light, transforming the dark into the light, the dawn, the cracking from the dark night into this bright light. And then the other one was Nebhet, which was all about expanding your light, connecting to other lights through the darkness, knowing duality, understanding the power of duality, understanding the power of expanse. And then the next guardian was Heru. Ma'at, which was all about connecting to the cosmos through the light, the stars, the moon, and the many suns and suns, identifying. And the next one was returning to the light, the oneness with the light, which is the stage of completion, which is all about Atum. And the strange thing about this, I must be very honest with you, Simon, in case there's many questions that come later. Gogoru is much more qualified to talk on it, because I just downloaded this information when I was saying, oh, guys, so I want to do a solstice ceremony. It's the dark night of the soul. Where do I stay? And the permission that they gave me to sit in was in the first space, which is ruled by Set, which is all about, the dark night of the soul, which is tapping into all of the aspects that we so desperately suppress, which is all about anger, the sadness, all of these emotions that, because as human beings and we live in a society, we can't truly express. So for me, that was such a powerful experience for them to take me through that, but say, stay here, stay within the darkness, stay within the dark night of the soul, stay within the shadow, for Pete's sakes, because that's what the winter solstice is about. It's about you dealing with the shadow. It's about you allowing the shadow to express itself through you without tapping into the light. And when I say tap into the light, I'll say it again, I've said it already, but tapping into the tools, because we could easily meditate or journal. No, leave all of that. Or we could easily go reach out to someone. No, leave all of that. There'll be a time for that. Sit with the uncomfortable and awkward and, all these emotions that we suppress, and just be in the dark night. And allow yourself to sit in the dark night. So, and that gatekeeper was set. And then after that, I was like, okay, cool. So where do I go from here? And then they took me through this journey of the shadow, and the main aspect of that, is they always say that there's a trigger that happens or a traumatic event that occurs. For me, it was the loss of my father. And I remember just going into this deep state of disbelief, which is also part of the shadow journey. Downwards, we're spiraling downwards. The aspect of disbelief is like, what's going on? And whoa, like, my dad, come on, I saw him yesterday. How could he, And then it starts settling in, the reality that he's no longer there. And then all of a sudden there was this physical reaction where I kind of went through a journey of just like, boom, like deep embodied physical trauma. And then there's the phase of the blame and the guilt, or the emotional phase, where it's like I either cry too much and I'm like, oh man, I didn't get to say this, or I didn't get to do this, or why did this happen? And so sitting in that journey from the traumatic event into the state of disbelief, into the physical reaction, into the emotional reaction, was such a powerful experience for me. I'm just talking from my life's experience and my shadow journey experience. Was so powerful and profound. And then the next aspect was, what we tend to do as human beings is we spiritually bypass. When I say spiritually bypass, we don't honor the event. We reach out too soon to get assistance, or we ignore and suppress the event or whatever it was. For me, it was my dad's passing. All I needed to do was sit with the fact that, this event has happened and how What's happening to you? Check in. And the sadness and the grief, and sit with that without reaching out to anyone so that I don't spiritually bypass, sit with that. Or positive delusion. No, it's fine, my dad. No, at least now he's an ancestor. He'll be fine. He's looking out for me. No, there's an impact that has happened. There's an event that's deeply traumatic that needs your attention. And so tapping into the shadow warrior, I learned over a period of time, helps you. So we move out of the shadow too soon and into the light. We move out of the darkness too soon. There's a reason that the universe has got this powerful, embedded wisdom of 12 hours or whatever amount of hours we need to sit in the darkness, and the rest of the time we need to sit in the light. The cracking of the dawn, going back to the today's parable. And then, of course, for me, the next one was the pit of darkness. Oh man, this is when you've agreed to say, okay, no longer will I do any spiritual bypassing, and you sit in this pit of darkness where you deal with your emotions, where you deal with your hurts, where you deal with and that's when the shadow warrior literally kicks in. It's like, I will hold you to a certain point where I see that you're just about to drown. I'll pull you out. It's the most encouraging and supportive process. And then you start to face the shadow, and then you sit with the shadow, and you listen to the shadow. You learn from the shadow, and then you release the shadow aspect of yourself, and you take full responsibility for the shadow and how it occurred and why it occurred. It's just this deep, profound. And so when I say take full responsibility, for me, my lesson for my shadow period with my dad was that, he was there to teach me to step into my spiritual position. In the sense that, as he died, he had just literally gone through a process himself of initiation into the ancestral realms, where they were saying, you've been avoiding aspects of yourself that we've been trying to call forward for a very long period of time. So we'll use your son, who will take through an initiation, and you will be there to hold space for him every single day. Not only that, but we will call you to lead the space, and so understanding his journey about transitioning to the other side, and how our lives were fully intertwined, and it had to happen that way. There was no other way that this could happen, so, and sending love and releasing. It just felt so good to know that my transition into my spiritual position was my dad's transition into his spiritual position on the other side. Say something, Simon. I'm talking so much.
No, I'm enjoying. Is someone whistling behind you?
Oh, that's gone. That's someone's phone. Sorry.
Okay.
That's my dad saying, "Yo, I'm listening." Whistling in the background.
That's so crazy. Anyway, man, first I want to welcome our guests on Clubhouse. Thank you all for being with us. My name is Simon Javan Okello. I am the host of the African Father in America podcast, and we are also live on YouTube. And I want to thank all of you who are there with us. We are having an incredible conversation guided by an African proverb from Seychelles. The proverb says, a pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. And my guest today, Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who is in the audience listening, was supposed to be our guest today, but she's on the road driving. And, instead of saying, I can't make it, she said, Lita would love to speak about this proverb, and now I understand why. So Gogo, thank you again. I want to go over a few other questions here with you later, and then come to our audience members. You shared with us stories from your recent life, from the work you just did just a few days ago. But I want you to take us back to your childhood. If you want, you can take us to the shadows of your childhood. But really, a story from your childhood that drives who you are today. When you look at the work that you're doing as a traditional healer, an ancestral medicine practitioner, and a shamanic practitioner. When you look back when you are 8 to 12 years old, is there a story there that you want to share with us that inspires who you are and what you do today?
Yes, of course, of course. So I mean, um, and it's fascinating when I look back at where I am and I track back my life. I always think to myself, like, okay, so did this thing start back then, or did it start right now? What was happening with you, Lita? And I've been doing a lot of introspecting around this, to be honest with you, around how I became, initiated into the space of becoming a traditional healer, how my ancestors called me, and my spiritual journey with Gogo Rutendo and the many other healers within this beautiful space. And I've always realized that, I've been a loner quite a lot since a kid. Since I was, I've always been, and that's because I've always sat there and questioned things, you know. So I remember when I was young, we used to do things, and I'd be like, but why are we doing this? When everybody kept doing it, because that's the way that we are conditioned, is just to follow suit versus ask questions. So I've always been, quote unquote, the rebel. When everybody goes left from a child, even, I would choose to go right, because I'm like, but why is everyone going right? But that's because I was also being, if I do some internal introspection and reflection about it much later, as a kid, I was always called by the ancestors to explore parts that were not explored, I was always the one who would sit with this question. And for me, it was just like, but that's just who I am. As a youngster, I just want to, why is everybody doing this? They were always trying to say, how do we rewrite our story, by utilizing this young man, as a child. I've never spoken about this. This is kind of weird. But how do we utilize his light? Because my name is Lita Lelanga, which means light, which means ray of sunshine. And I asked my mom this when I was like much older. I was like, but mom, why did you call me this? Because everybody used to, in South Africa, we've got this measurement, which is a metric. It's 1 liter. So I used to be teased the whole time, 1 liter of Coke, 1 liter of this, So I'd be like, oh, liter, how many liters are you? They would say, and it used to really, really like rub me the wrong way. And so much later I asked mom, but mom, what does my name mean? And why would you call me liter of all things? Like now everyone's calling me liter of Coke, liter of this, liter of that. I'm like, it gets tiring, Ma. How could you do that to me? And she said that, the reason that we called you this name is because when we looked at you, we saw light. As the moment that you were born, we saw light. So you are going to be, in Xhosa they would say, ilitha lethu, which means our light. And ulilitha lelanga, which means that with the sun, as the sun rises, the first rays in the beautiful morning that come through, similar to the, today's proverb, Pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. Setting sun, those last rays, those beautiful, colorful rays. It's like, so working with the sun's potency and the sun's energy, But yeah, I've always been a bit of a rebel as a child and a loner as a child, and sitting in the shadows and just being alone, and having to think, but what's going on here? These human beings are weird people. Why are they doing this without reason? And then I'd run away from certain things and stuff like that. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it did. It did. Man, I love asking this question to all, the guests of the African Father in America podcast, because I feel that it's a critical question, and I always relate it to my own story, which I won't share today, but, events that happened when I was 8 to 12 really led to who I am today. And so I always like asking that question because of that. And I always listen to really, really inspiring stories. But I want to welcome our guests, who are joining us on Clubhouse, and also those who are joining us on YouTube. We can't do this on our own. We are going to hear from you in just a moment. Today I'm having a conversation with Lita Boy, who is a traditional healer, ancestral medicine practitioner, and shamanic practitioner. He's
It's a mouthful.
I
Just call him Lita.
know,
He's
I
awesome, awesome
know.
guy.
Oh no, I have to. You always, you always, you are one of the people that know how to praise yourself. And so whenever I meet you, I want to be ready to praise myself, because you're really, this light that your parents talked about, because even the voice message you left me just left me smiling, this morning. So whenever I communicate with you, the last thing you say in the communication leaves me smiling. So sometimes I only remember the last thing you said. I don't remember everything.
Oh, what a privilege and an honor. Thank you.
Yeah. And when I was listening to your voice note, I was actually thinking that, this guy should have a radio show or something like that, because, you just bring so much light and life to people. But I want you to talk now about what you think is your biggest accomplishment, as a traditional healer, as an ancestral medicine practitioner, and shamanic practitioner. What is it that, if you look back, you say that, this is something I'm really proud of, Simon?
I'm really proud of. So one of my life's purpose and my life's vision that I've been sitting with my guides and my ancestors over the past couple of years and asking them, like, but why am I here? What's happening? I'm really proud and honored and blessed, and I know that I'm doing something right when I'm a part of this kind of network that you've created. And I'll tell you why. So for me, this is one of my biggest accomplishments, because my entire call from the ancestors was that you should be a part of a person that builds communities, is part of communities, and leads communities one way or the other. So that became a big kind of, radar point for me. Is like, am I building communities? Am I part of communities that are making a massive difference in the world one way or the other? Of people who are, of different backgrounds, of different spaces and places, And so for me, it seems like each moment that I get blessed with to share in community, especially in communities that I love and I'm a part of, and I believe in, like yours, it's like, wow, this is like a deep, deep honor for me. It's beyond an accomplishment. It's a deep privilege and an honor, because you've opened up the space for me to live my life's purpose. And for me, that's massive, greater than any other accomplishment, because being in purpose and on purpose is very important to me. So opportunities where I get to be in communities and work with communities and share in communities, is probably one of my many great accomplishments. So Africa Day was massive for me, because man, oh man, it was just like, wow, just getting together with like so many different people for 24 hours and just like, what a beautiful community. Wow. What an incredibly welcoming and loving community to be a part of, It just really makes me a little bit emotional, because that's what I've always wanted, and so the greatest accomplishment for me is literally finding communities like this and contributing how I can, when I can, wherever I can, because this feeds my soul, and this reminds me that, Lita, you're right on purpose. Yeah.
Man, I can't tell you how everything I do and everything we do is incomplete without each other. Like this work, the Daily African Proverbs, it's completely incomplete without you, Gugu Tendongara, our audience members who are listening and watching. There are people like Jay, who is on the stage. All of us fuel each other. We add a little bit of fire to each other, and that's what keeps this going. So I really, really thank you for everything you said. That was the most beautiful answer I've had in a while. But I want you to take some notes. We want to hear from our audience members for a little while, and then after we hear from our audience members, I want you to just make a few comments, maybe pick 3 of what you hear, and maybe make some comments on it, and then share with us how we can support your work. Is there a website we can go to right now? There are almost 50 people who have already been here in and out. There are 22 people on Clubhouse and 6 people on YouTube who are listening to our conversation. Think about how they can support your work, in a moment, and share with us. I do want to invite our audience members to share, but I'll start with Gogo Rutendo Ngara, who joined us on the stage. Gogo, how are you doing? And, share with us your perspectives.
Thank you so much, Simon, and thank you so much, Lita. It's always so beautiful seeing the different interpretations of the Proverbs. And that's the beauty of Proverbs. They're so rich and so nourishing and so full of blossoms to pick from. So thank you so much, Lita, for your journey. Interestingly enough, when I first saw the proverb, the first thing that struck me was the derogatory nature of the translation, which speaks to the shadow. So the word pygmy, which obviously originates with ancient Greek scholars who used this to describe any race of who they called dwarfs, or members of small-statured people, particularly native to equatorial Africa, and of course to Southeastern Asia as well. And this word pygmy was used in a disparaging and offensive way, and obviously then further translated into looking at a person of small importance, or a person of limited attributes, or limited capacity, or limited intelligence, or very small in measure. And so I was really struck by the translation and the use of the word, and the need to perhaps assert what the names of those of smaller stature within our African continent call themselves, whether it is the Baka, whether it is the Mbuti, whether it is the Twa, whether it is the Bongo. But of course, it relates to the proverb itself, which speaks about the shadow. And of course, this derogatory nature of the Africa is a great shadow that we have been a part of on our continent. And not, for instance, recognizing the incredible, the Batwa people are our second oldest ancestors, on the planet. And they are so incredibly inherently interconnected, interdependent, and interrelated with nature. And they take care of those forests with everything they have, and yet they're considered dwarfed in terms of intelligence, not just in height. And of course, this taking us into a place of derogation and derogatory speaks to the shadows. It is in the shadows where the derogatory sits. It is also, as Lita said, of deep relevance, because we're just coming here from the southern hemisphere, from the winter solstice, when it's the time to really go into those shadows in where we are, what has been called the dark continent. So literally, of course, the proverb to me follows the sun from sunrise to sunset. And of course, we know that the longest shadows occur after dawn and just before dusk, but the shortest shadows occur at noon. And it's interesting because when the shortest shadow is in some of our African philosophies is the time when you do not see yourself. And therefore it is this time when you are most hidden. And this is the time when the sun is at its highest point, which speaks to duality, that it is actually through your shadow that you're actually able to see yourself more than you are able to see yourself when the sun is at its highest point. So in conclusion, I'll just say, for me, the proverb tells us that the sun would not know its radiance were it not for the shadows it casts, and a candle would not live its purpose of illumination were it not for the darkness. And in the absence of a river or a body of water to see our reflection, we would not have a way of seeing we exist in the world. Shadows tell us we exist. A shadow is a mirror. The darkness is necessary for the light. And of course, all cosmology tells us that light emerges from the darkness. So it is only through our natural opposition or the natural opposite, that we have a reference to where we are. And this is the journey from enlightenment to endarkenment and back again. And that's my interpretation. Thank you so much, Lita. Thank you so much, Simon.
Wow, thank you, Gogo. I just appreciate you so much, Lita. I actually want you to come in sooner. I'm going to ask our audience members, especially those who are on stage, to forgive me, because we will not have time for everyone to, share your own interpretation of this proverb and your perspectives, because we are planning to wrap up in 10 minutes. So for those who are on stage, just quickly, we have enough time for everyone to be able to say something. Just quickly introduce yourself, where you're joining us from, and any comment to what Gogo or Lita has shared. And then, from there we will have Lita close for us. Thank you all so much. Lavender, how are you? Why don't we come to you first, then go to Debbie? Just briefly, maybe in 30 seconds or 1 minute.
Hi, Simon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share. I'm Lavender. I'm speaking from Nairobi, Kenya. I'd really like to thank Lita for showing up, and I wish he could come through for like our sessions daily, like pop in and drop gems of wisdom. Thank you so much, Lita. I'm one of those people looking up to you and following your teachings. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you, Lavender. Hi, Debbie. How are you? Where are you joining us from? And what are your just brief comments to our guest today?
Thank you. Greetings and appreciation to all. I am Debbie Berlin, aka Game Dev Debbie, joining from Maryland near Washington, D.C. I really appreciate the discussion today, especially the notion of sitting in the darkness instead of trying to escape or alleviate it, and having that warrior guide of shadow work to help you through. Thank you. I also want to say, from Teal Swan, who I listen to, she conceptualizes shadow work as a true light work in so much as a window that has smudges on it. And you take that time to get those smudges off. It actually lets more light in. So I really appreciate the perspectives discussed today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Hi, Stella. How are you? Where are you joining us from? And what are your brief comments?
Hi, Simon. Hi, everyone. This is Stella from Kenya. And I'm really happy today because this week we were kind of focusing on success and the importance of failure in achieving success on your set goals. And it keeps getting interesting, and I really enjoyed the sessions this week, especially the stories from our guests. They're so inspirational, and when they're related to the proverbs we talk about every day, just keeps getting beautiful. So just today I just want to encourage us to keep being consistent and keep joining this conversation, and we keep building our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Stella. I appreciate that. Hey, Kay, how are you? And what are your thoughts? Where are you joining us from? Just briefly.
I'm here from on Abenaki land, commonly referred to as Vermont. My thoughts, I didn't know that pygmy was derogatory, and I also didn't take shadow as dark. I interpreted it as influence, in terms of our ability to reach out to others around us in a larger influencing manner. And that's what I found. And thank you so much for this room.
You're most welcome. Thank you for being here. Jakumi, how are you doing today? And what are your thoughts? Where are you joining us from? Just briefly. Thank you.
Hey, Grand Rising, everyone. I'm joining you from Jacksonville, Florida. And my thoughts on this particular proverb, I see it as like this, right? The pygmies looked at as small, but as the sun goes down, right, So what the pygmy does when nobody can see, the work that you do when nobody can see. If you're a professional, you do all of this work when nobody can see it, right? So it seems like you're small, but you're doing all this work to become larger. You're doing it when nobody else can see it. So keep doing that work in the dark when nobody else can see, and soon, you will shine.
Thank you so much, Jakumi. I appreciate that. I'm grateful that you're here. Hey, Jay, I have the card that you wrote to me, and it's funny, it took weeks before I realized that it was you who sent me this really nice card. I have it in front of me every day, so thank you. For those who are wondering, the card is really nice, and it says the ancestors are moving mountains to see you rise. I love it, Jay. You wrote your name so fast, so it took me a while to understand who it was, and I discovered yesterday that it was you, and I just want you to know that you're really, really special.
Thank you so much, dear brother Simon. You're special for so many people in so many different ways, and you're the shadow that you're leaving in the lives of individuals is huge. It's larger than life. What I wanted to say, first of all, the leader, I love your name, and I love it even more because of why your parents gave you that name. And I think it's so invaluable and special and important for parents to think about what they're naming their child, to give that name value and significance and importance. And that makes you shine even brighter. I agree with Simon that just hearing you speak really does warm my heart. It makes me smile. And it's because you've come into yourself and you also understand the importance of being a light. And I'll leave it at that because we do have to be quick. But I do want to say that when this room ends, that I'll be smiling because of your energy, leader, and the love of life that you have, and by being there for community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jay. I truly appreciate you. Dear Gogo, I just want to check in with you if you have closing remarks. This Thursdays, I really wanted to be dedicated to supporting the work that you do. So if there's anything we can do now to support your work, Gogo, or any place you want to send us, let us know. Or otherwise, I'll go to Lita and I'll ask you the same question, Lita.
Hi, thank you so much, Simon. I think I'll leave the question to Lita.
No, Gogo, it's yours. Gogo likes to put me on the spot, just like Simon always puts me on the spot.
I know. I can't remember when we were doing the run. It's the dry run for Africa Day. I just got you guys live on YouTube without notice, and that was so great. You should always be ready. So that you don't have to.
The reason they call it a dry run, Simon, because it's dry and we're trying to run with it to find out what's happening. But Simon puts us on YouTube.
Yeah, I didn't know it could work, so I was testing it, and some things you have to actually test it live, and so I appreciate you for just being kind and gracious. So for those who are joining us just now, my name is Simon Okello, and I'm in Seattle, Washington. The last 1 hour we've been hosting an incredible human being, our brother Lita Boy. And Lita is a gifted traditional healer, ancestral medicine practitioner, and shamanic practitioner. And, it flowed this time. So,
well done.
You get better, just like this proverb that was the center of our conversation, you get better towards the end of, time. So the proverb we discussed today said a pygmy's shadow is greater with the setting sun. And Lita, just share with us what you heard from our friends who are joining us, and your closing remarks, and also how we can support you.
Yes, I mean, so for me, my favorite one for today was definitely the whole idea that, the greatest work you'll ever do will be in the times where no one sees you, where you're all by yourself. You're in the shadows. You're in the darkness. Because everybody sees this radiant being that you become, but only because of the dark spaces uh, that you've been within. And of course, the last one as well was powerful for me in terms of connecting with the significance of your name. That's been a massive journey for me. Why did your parents call you that name? And as parents as well, understanding the power that goes within your name, because that flows into your purpose and that flows into becoming who you are to a certain degree. So those are the two main ones that really, really stuck out with me. And deep gratitude for everyone for sharing their gratitude. And and I guess for me, the closing remarks, Simon, is that I see this vision where one day we are all able to do both, sit within the shadow and sit within the light, and not have to run away from either. Because just like the seasons, things will always change. There'll be a time for you to sit in the shadows, so honor that. There'll be a time for you to sit within the light. Honor that too. And don't bypass the process. Sit within the shadow so that, so that the shadow becomes greater with the setting of the sun.
Lita,
Yeah.
I do have a question. I know we are wrapping up. That is really related to everything you just said, and also everything we've been discussing. Last week when Gogo Rutendo was our guest, we talked about Credo Mutua's initiation and how there was, cold and hot as part of the initiation, where there was fire and snow, and today we are talking about the light and the shadow. Can you just speak to that a little?
So this is a journey that I'm exploring. This is definitely a journey that I'm exploring, and one of the greatest things was going to Inzalo Yelanga, which is ironically also my ancestors gave me this name, which is that site where Credo Mutua was initiated. And the first time I went there, it was a powerful experience. But and there's the east, the north, the south, and the west, and for me, those are all dualities. The dualities that exist within life, and the message that keeps coming through for me is that learning to hold both without judgment of either, learning to be hot without judging the hotness, and learning to be cold without feeling like the need to raise the heat, or be cold without the need feeling to raise, vice versa. Learning to sit within your darkness and not need the light, learning to sit within the light, because that's the duality. Just like day becomes night, just like the seasons change, autumn, summer, spring, and winter, is just learning to sit within the duality and not run away from it, and be conscious of it, and just allow yourself to go where your spirit, your soul, and your ancestors and your guides are seeking you to be. But holding both, the everything, Kogoro Tendo always says this, is the everything and the nothingness, the void, and the everything. And life is all about duality. So let's hold the power and the potential of experiencing both and holding both. I could go on forever, Simon. Stop me.
Yeah, I want us to do part 2. We will talk to Gogo so that she can guide us on when we can do part 2 with you. But now let us know how we can support you. Send us to our website.
Thank you, Simon. Deeply, deeply privileged. So I've got my website is www.litaboy.com. That's LITHA. BWI.com. That's Lita Boy, and that's where I've got a lot of my spiritual practice work that I do. And of course, we can't forget ancientwisdom.africa, which is, the hub where we are privileged enough to gather the information, share the information, and be of service to the world by rooting ourselves within an African perspective and cosmology and ways of looking at life. www.ancientwisdom.africa. Of course, you want to follow me on Instagram. It's at Lita Boy. I don't know if you got the Insta, but hey, Insta me out.
Yeah, I'll definitely follow you. I'll follow you and stalk you on Instagram. I'll do that immediately after this.
I'll stop you back.
This has been so good. I can't tell you how grateful I am, Lita, for the time you made today for us to, connect and really, really learn. And, to all our guests who are on YouTube, thank you again so much. To all our guests who are on Clubhouse, thank you so much. By the way, if you're on Clubhouse, make sure you're following the African Father in America Club and nominate, 3 to 5 people to join the club. And if you are on YouTube and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe. On Clubhouse, the channel is at the top of the room. You can, tap that link and, subscribe to the channel so that when we are doing this again tomorrow and, Monday to Friday, 6 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, you are able to catch this incredible conversation. So Lita, again, thank you so much. I'll be seeing you soon.
Soon.
Okay.
Thank you.
Take care. All right. Bye.
Blessings. Okay. Bye.
Blessings.
Father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.